Okay, now, so categories of animal virus infections. Okay, so this is more about like kind of disease. Okay, so acute infections are right. They're short. It happens right away. You get sick really fast, right? So in acute infections, the virions there's a burst when they're released from the infected host cell. Okay, so the immune system will then get rid of the virus for you, hopefully. So that's influenza, mumps, polio are examples of acute viral infections. Okay, now persistent infections, okay, may continue for years or a lifetime. Okay, sometimes you have symptoms, sometimes you don't. So some viruses don't fall neatly into a category. Okay, an example of that is HIV, because it's definitely persistent, but you can get acute symptoms too. Okay, now persistent infections can be subdivided and they can be chronic or they can be latent. Okay, so if it's a chronic infection, basically you have a continuous production of low levels of the virus. Okay, so the carrier might not have symptoms, but they can still pass the virus on. Okay, so that's chronic. If it's latent, okay, the viral genome is in the cell, but it's not doing anything. Okay, so it's just hanging out. It can reactivate and cause problem. So this would be like varicella zoster, which is chickenpox or shingles. Let me see. Didn't spell that. Okay, so the viral genome could be integrated into the host chromosome, and then something happens, and that triggers it to like kind of get active and cause a problem. Okay, so persistent, chronic, or latent. Okay, so here's graphs that are trying to show you this. So this is an acute infection, so flu. I'm trying to find a better color. Okay, so here, this on the x-axis, we have time in days, and then on the y-axis, we have appearance of symptoms and infectious virions. Okay, so infectious virions are the light color, and then disease is the dark orange. Okay, so flu, you have infectious virions, right? And you get sick, and then the virions go down. Okay, and then the virus disappears after you're better. Okay, now Hep B, hepatitis B, right, which is liver disease. Okay, so it's chronic. So these are persistent, right? But this one's chronic. So Hep B is chronic. So you have infectious virions, you have disease, and then you can still infect other people. Okay, so you might not you don't have any symptoms, you're still making the virus. Okay, a latent infection, this example they use is cold sores, which would be a herpes virus, right? So you can kind of see how it goes up, and then you're non-infectious, but the virus is somewhere in your genome hanging out. Then maybe you get stressed out, run down, the immune system gets compromised, right? And then it goes up again, or you get sick again. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Another example of a latent infection. So this is chickenpox. I think that's what this is supposed to be. It doesn't say that it is. Yeah, it is. No, this is cold sores. This is herpes simplex type 1. Okay, so initial infection, sore throat. I don't know what this picture is actually supposed to be. It kind of looks like but this is saying it's causing cold sores, so it's got to be herpes. Okay, so this latent infection is just showing you, okay, you get infected, the virus can come in and it can hang out in certain places in your body. So chickenpox is the one I like to use because it hangs out in the dorsal root ganglion, which is part of the spinal nerves that come off of your spine. So it hangs out in there. And so it would be down here further. It hangs out in there. And then when you get stressed out or tired or something's going on, it reactivates. And that's when you get shingles. And when people get shingles, they're usually in a banding pattern and they might be on one half of the body or not the other. And that's because they're in the spinal nerve. Okay, so where the spinal nerve is going in your body, that's where the virus is affecting you. Which I should probably have a better picture of that, but okay, now viruses and tumors. Okay, so what's the connection between viruses and cancer? Okay, so tumors are abnormal growth. Okay, so something's gone wrong with mitosis. Okay, so you have too much mitosis, the cells are reproducing too much. Okay, so now tumors could be cancerous, which cancerous is also malignant, or they could be benign. So benign is not cancerous. Okay, now there are two kind of groups of genes in your cells that are going to help protect you from a cell becoming cancerous. Okay, so, well, these are not going to protect you. These we want to turn off. So proto-oncogenes, they're going to stimulate cell growth and division. So we don't want those on. Okay, we want those off. And then we also have tumor suppressor genes, which inhibit cell growth. So we want to make sure those are on and functioning. Okay, so viruses, when they come into a host cell and they get into the nucleus, depending on where they integrate in the nucleus, they could disrupt these processes that keep you from getting cancer. Okay, so viruses can cause mutations, which can cause uncontrollable cell growth. They could change a proto-oncogene to an oncogene. Okay, so viruses could carry the oncogene, so they insert it. Sometimes they cause spontaneous mutations. So they're going to change the genome somehow, and the cell's not going to be able to function normally. Okay, so there are what they call oncoviruses. So this is definition: viruses that can cause cancer in humans. They can arise from viral infection. The viral genome could act as an oncogene, or the viral genome inserts into the host chromosome and somehow it changes the DNA. That's kind of redundant. Most of the time, these oncoviruses are DNA viruses. Okay, the cancers that are caused by their viruses, they're not going to develop right away. Okay, so it usually happens like 15 to 40 years after you get infected with the virus that you might have cancer from it. Okay, so it's not like, boom, you get infected by this virus and you get cancer right away. A small percentage of the people that actually get infected by an oncovirus actually develop the cancer that's associated with it. Okay, so I'll show you a picture in a minute, a table. So there are vaccines that are in place to help you from getting the virus. They're going to prevent you from getting the virus, and therefore they would prevent you from getting the cancer. So human papillomavirus is that, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. Okay, so here are some viruses associated with cancers in humans. Okay, the big one that, well, they're all kind of big, but some of them are rare. The ones you you hear about, and they have a vaccine for it. This is this one, HPV. Okay, so human papillomaviruses are the cause of genital warts. So that's a sexually transmitted disease, but they can integrate into the cell, and then they can cause different kinds of cancer. So they can cause cervical cancer, they can cause vulval cancer, they can cause penile cancer, anal cancer, oral cancer. Okay, so this is the one that Gardasil is the vaccine to help prevent against it. Hep B can lead to liver cancer. Epstein-Barr virus can lead to lymphoma or cancer of the nose and pharynx. Okay, Hep C can lead to liver cancer, right? So there's not a ton of them, but there's definitely an association between it. But like I said, it's rare. So this chart is supposed to kind of summarize what animal viruses can do to the cells they infect. Okay, so here is a cell, it's got a virus in it. Okay, so the virus can integrate into the DNA. Okay, so if it becomes part of it, it could cause a tumor. Okay, it could cause a latent infection. Okay, so it just hangs out in there, doesn't harm the host, but it could flare up later. Okay, the viral DNA forms a circular plasmid. Okay, they could cause a tumor, or they could cause a latent infection, and the plasmid's just hanging out in there. Okay, or the virus could replicate in the host, okay, and it causes a productive infection that kills the host cell. Or it could be a productive infection that it's just making the host cells little virus factories. There are cancer-fighting viruses. So they call them oncolytic viruses. So they've taken some viruses and genetically engineered them so that they can actually maybe fight the cancer cells, so they could destroy the cancer cells. Pretty sure they've done this with polio and some types of like glioblastomas, so brain cancer. Sometimes they're in there and they'll stimulate the host cell's immune system. They've used herpes simplex virus type 1 to treat melanoma, so skin lesions. Okay, so they've modified the virus, and so it wants to infect and multiply in the tumor cells. So it's kind of cool, but they have a hard time convincing people, maybe in healthcare, that it's okay to put this into somebody because they don't want this to spread to other people. And polio was like tricky, but it's very real. They've used this. I'll find a video and link it for you. To grow viruses, you have to have a host. Okay, you can't grow them in a petri dish with agar. You can't. They have to have a host cell. Okay, so appropriate host. So they've done it by inoculating live animals. Okay, chicken eggs. Okay, so when they make the flu vaccine, it's made in chicken eggs. Okay, so that's why they ask you, are you allergic to eggs before they give you the flu vaccine? There are ones that are developed without eggs. They can also grow them in cell culture. So in cell culture, basically you have a flask, some sort of like container, and you can grow cells in there without having to have the animal. and then you can put the virus in there, and you can do it without having to kill an animal. These are what healthy cells look like when they're growing in cell culture. So they kind of look like maybe like little stars. But if they do get infected with the virus, it's going to change what the cell actually looks like. And yeah, this, you don't have to worry about that. It's just kind of something that was cool. Okay, now plant viruses are very important to farmers. Okay, so they're economically really, really important. There's like a whole science of plant virus study, right? So lots of times they're gonna the I'm just gonna say leaves. The leaves can turn yellow. They might have irregular lines. They might actually, plants might get tumors, trees might get tumors. So there's all sorts of visible signs that people can recognize, and then they'll do tests to look to see if the plant has the virus, and then they can kind of figure out what to do. If you buy seeds, a lot of times on the seed packet, it says what viruses the seeds are resistant to, so that you don't get it. So this is back to tobacco mosaic virus again. So it is a really bad disease of tobacco. So it's hard to get rid of it. If somebody smokes a cigarette, if they get the virus on their hands, they can even transmit it if they're a tobacco grower. It's interesting. Plant viruses are very interesting, but you guys don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Most of the time they enter through a wound in the plant. Okay, so they don't attach to the receptors, but they might go through an opening on the bottom of the leaf, or a insect could inject them. They can be transmitted by humans, by soil, seeds being contaminated. Once plants get the virus, it's hard to eliminate it because it ends up in the soil. It ends up everywhere. And that's the end of that.